Hi there, my name is Maggie Cantola and I am a nutrition instructor with MSU Extension in Wayne County. And I am lucky enough to have my office be in Eastern Market, so I am able to see lots of produce all year round coming in and out of the market. And first today we are going to do a greens recipe. And this is curly kale. And I brought some other greens just to show you what they look like. This is rainbow chard. It gets its name from the colorful stem. You can also find the stems bright yellow, orange, green, and primarily red in this bunch it looks like. And then we also have collard greens, which many of you have probably seen before, and this is a very common green. It's popular in southern cooking especially. So what we're going to do today first is make sauteed kale. I love this as a side with entrees. It's good with a meat dish or by itself. It goes with all sorts of flavors of cooking. It's very versatile. So what you want to look for when you're buying kale is you want it to have this nice green color. This is a nice bunch. There's not any holes in the leaves. In midsummer you can begin to see a lot of holes because of flea beetles and other pests. It's okay to eat. People just might not like the way it looks as much. You want to be sure to always wash your greens and wash your hands. So before I got started today, I washed my hands, 20 seconds hot soapy water, and dried them with a paper towel. And then I rinsed my greens, and I didn't dry them off because I want them to have a little bit of water to kind of steam them in the saute pan. And I left this leaf out so you can kind of see what to avoid. When you're buying kale and other greens, you want to avoid this yellowing of the leaf. And also this little bit of browning here. It's hard to see because it's not very much, but you want to avoid that as well. So first we're going to dice our onion, and we're going to saute that in a little bit of olive oil. So I like to heat my oil in the pan first. So we'll put about 1 tablespoon worth of oil. It looks like maybe more, but it's coming out really slow. All right, so an easy way to cut an onion. Well, we'll back up here. So when you're getting your kitchen set up, you want to have a damp towel underneath your cutting board. This prevents it from slipping, which is a nice technique to use. It also makes for easy cleanup because you have the towel there already once you move your cutting board. So when dicing onions, you want to first chop off the front, or the top rather, where the stem comes up. And then you're going to turn it so it sits nicely on its bottom there. And then you're going to slice it in half to the right of the roots, or left if you're left-handed. And this makes it easy to peel. So I'm going to peel off that outer papery flesh. And if you're like me, or you don't like to waste food, or any of the above, you can save these scraps to make veggie stock at home. It's really easy and very non-labor intensive, and it saves money. Usually organic vegetable stock at the store is a few dollars when it's free to make, so I like to save the stuff. Kale stems and other parts of the leaf that you may not use are also good for your vegetable stock, so we'll save those today as well. Sometimes the skin will come off easy, sometimes not so easy. This case, not so easy. Okay, so we're going to take our onion, and we're going to do some lateral slices here. And we want to try to keep it intact, so if it falls apart, you can kind of squish it back together, and then rotate it 90 degrees. And when you're holding your knife, a good tip is to hold up on here. Actually, you don't want to hold the handle back like this, because when you're doing a lot of chopping, if you're in the kitchen a lot, it relieves the pressure on the wrist. So you can work faster and be kind to your wrist. So you're going to want to rotate it 90 degrees, like I said, line it up, and then take your left hand, or right if you're left-handed, and tuck your thumb behind your fingers, curl your fingers down. This takes getting used to, but it prevents yourself from getting cut, which nobody wants that. So, and with that, we're just going to make some quick dices. And there you have a diced up onion, which sometimes can take people a few minutes, and with this technique it takes just a few seconds. So we'll add that to our hot saute pan, and we'll let that go for just a few minutes until the onions are translucent. And we're going to use a wooden spoon to stir it around to avoid scratching the bottom of the pan. And while that's cooking, we can start to prepare our kale. So like I said, we're going to remove the yellowing leaves, but you can save those for your vegetable stock. And we want to remove the leaves from the stem. One easy way to prepare this is when you tear the leaf off the stem, do it in small pieces, which will eliminate the need to chop this up later, so it saves a step. And if you're very adventurous and love vegetables, this is edible. It's just very tough and not that delicious like the leaves are. I usually give these to my dog. He actually loves them, so if you have a dog, you can try to give it to your dog. They might like it. It's a treat for him. So, I want to stir this to make sure they don't burn. And I may have not mentioned, but we want this medium to high heat. One thing with greens is that they cook down a lot. So it may look like you're eating way too much greens for your own good, but you'll be surprised how much they cook down. And we'll do this in batches because usually the pan is never big enough for as much greens as you're going to be using. And there are several different ways to prepare greens. This is just one of them. Some people like to cook theirs for a very long time, especially the southern style cooking with collards. And that's something you kind of want to avoid because the longer they cook, the nutrients start to seep out, and we want those nutrients. A great thing about kale and other dark leafy greens is that it has a lot of vitamin A, a lot of vitamin K, and it has lots of fiber, and it's an antioxidant as well, which helps lower cholesterol, and it's been proven to prevent some type of cancers. So the more greens, the better. This looks like a good start. Oh, and I'd like to show, this is kind of a baby leaf, and when it's this small like this and the stem is more tender, we can eat that stem. So I'll just rip this whole piece up like this. And then the onion looks like it's doing pretty good. It's a little translucent like we want to see. So now we can start to throw our kale in there. And we've got our salt and pepper here, so we're just going to add 2 pinches. And we'll let this just go for a little bit, stirring frequently to make sure all the leaves get their fair share of heat. And while that is going, we will cut up some fresh garlic. We don't want to add the garlic with the onion because generally the garlic will start to brown and it becomes crunchy in texture, and it's just not very good. So we'll wait till the kale's in there to add the garlic. I love garlic, so I usually use 2 or 3 cloves. And when garlic's not in season, like right now, it doesn't have that super pungent flavor, so it won't be overpowering when it comes time to eat your greens. So one way to prepare your garlic clove is to take your knife, put it on flat here, and put your weight into it, and that'll crush the clove so the skin comes right off. And if you have a garlic press at home, that works too. This method I like a lot though. One less thing to wash. All right, put that aside. And it is nice to maybe have a little bucket or something to put all your compost scraps or stock scraps in. So pardon me for not being very tidy in my kitchen, but I generally make a mess when I'm in the kitchen. So we're going to just slice up our garlic. This is called mincing. And you can see how I'm holding the knife up on the blade a little bit, and this allows me to rock the knife and to use the weight of the blade to cut through that garlic. So one more here. And we'll add that to our greens. Incorporate all of that goodness. You can tell when the greens start to get done because they'll become much darker in color. You want to avoid overcooking them, like I said, because that'll leach out the nutrients and they'll take on sort of a gray color. So we want to avoid that. As you can see, it's turning nice and dark. We want it to be cooked down a little bit more, so it's got a few more minutes. And when you're making this, you can add a little bit of white wine or some apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar. Today we're going to use apple cider vinegar. That just gives it a nice little taste. And also I like to use a little lemon juice, fresh lemon. So be sure to always wash your lemon because the rind often has been handled by multiple people, and in the store it's been moved around a lot. So like all vegetables, you want to be sure to wash the rind, even though we don't use the rind unless we're zesting it. So what I'm doing now is putting my weight into the lemon, and this kind of breaks up the fibers inside, which allow it to be juiced a little bit easier. So the lemon juice will come right out nicely. So the juice from about half a lemon is usually more than enough. You wouldn't want to add the lemon rind to your vegetable stock. It would probably give it a very odd taste. So we'll put that in our compost pile. And as you can see, I'm just adding this to the current batch. That's okay to do. You don't have to wait till one is fully done to add the remaining leaves. And today we're doing the saute recipe, but other ways to cook kale and other greens, we can, of course, eat them raw. Kale and collards have a little more dense of a texture than spinach, so we wouldn't want to eat them plain raw. They are best in a salad that's been marinated in their dressing for maybe 24 hours, which tenderizes the leaves and makes it very delicious. With spinach and chard, you can actually eat those leaves just plain in a salad with some dressing. That's usually good enough. You can also put them in smoothies if you don't like greens and there's no way you're going to like them. Smoothies is a great way to get those extra nutrients and those healthy dark green vegetables. I promise you, you cannot taste them in there if you put enough fresh fruit or frozen fruit in your smoothies and some juice and yogurt. You cannot taste the greens. It might take on a very strange color, but you will not taste them. It's a good way to get kids to eat their greens too. Sneak them in the smoothies. And for those of you that like a little extra flavor or a little extra heat, we're going to add just a little bit of roasted red pepper flakes. This gives it a nice little bit of heat to it, a little more flavor. And at this time, when they're about done, we can add the apple cider vinegar. I'm just going to do about a capful, which is probably about a teaspoon. You can always add more vinegar. And same with salt and pepper. You can always add more, but once you add too much, there's no going back. So your best bet is to add a little bit, taste it, and if you think you'd like more, go from there. So while this finishes up, I'll talk about Swiss chard a little bit more. So the stems, as you can see, are very beautiful. And like we removed the stems for the kale, and we would do the same with the collards, these stems go great in salads. They have a texture like celery, and they've also got a lot of nutrients in there. So don't discard these stems. They look great in a salad. They really pop out with the beautiful color that they are. And in terms of storing your greens, if you don't eat them all, you can just put them in an airtight container in the fridge, and they'll last about 5 days. You wouldn't want to go any longer than that. And for the fresh kale or other greens that's in your refrigerator, you're going to want to put them in a sealed plastic bag, and they will last up to 2 weeks if they're fresh. And do not wash them before you store them. Wash them right before you prepare them. That will cause them to last longer. So as you can see, this really cooked down. This was a heaping mound of kale, and now it's about, I would say, 3 servings of kale, about a little over a cup each. And that brings me to the My Plate. Michelle Obama came up with this great visual. It's kind of a new take on the food pyramid idea. So this is a better way for us to see what we should be intaking every day. We want to fill half our plate with fruits and vegetables, a little more vegetables than the fruit, and then we want to try to make half our grains whole grains. And our protein category, as you can see, is the smallest. As Americans, we especially get a lot more protein than we actually need and that our body actually digests. So you want to always fill half your plate with fruits and vegetables, if you can. And they're one of the things where you can have seconds and not feel guilty. You can even have thirds if you want. And then that brings me to, where do you get kale? Where do you get collards? Where do you get Swiss chard or spinach? You can find these almost year-round at farmers markets. They're one of the things you can plant earliest in the spring here in Michigan, and they're one of the things that you can plant latest in the fall. So it is available half of our year probably. They tolerate cold temperatures very well, and a night of cold temperatures will actually release the sugars in the leaves and cause them to be a little bit sweeter and a little more flavorful. So you'll be sure to find these at farmers markets, and you'll also be sure to find them at just about any grocery store. Kale also comes in a few different varieties. There's dino kale, which gets its name because it looks like dinosaur skin almost. It's kind of bubbly and prehistoric looking, so kids really like that. It's also called lucinato kale. And then there's red Russian kale, which is a purpley kale. Similar to this in style. It's curly like this, but it's purple. They all taste very similar. The dino kale can be a little bit more tender, a little more similar to spinach, but it still has that hardiness of a leafy green. And that wraps up my greens portion. Thank you.